Hello, this is Victor. I'm here with a new topic to discuss, and are Games Workshop miniatures overpriced? This is coming from a question that I received in my channel, so I thought, this is interesting thing to discuss and to share with you, and to show what I think is the cost structure of a miniature, and why I think the cost Games Workshop puts on the miniatures. I'm going to focus mainly on the injected mold miniatures. We know that is the focus now of Games Workshop, and they are stopping using the Finecast. So let's do first a cost breakdown. So when we do cost breakdown, I mean, what are all the costs associated when you make miniatures? First of all, we have the design cost. We need or a group of designers, a team of designers. We need all the facilities associated to these designers. So you need a location to be there, they need tools, they have some project costs. Then you need engineers. You have to transform this sculpt into something that can be uh, molded. Today they do a lot of 3D CAD, so the designers most likely there are a lot of designers that are designing directly on computer, but you also need to transform all these designs into something that is injectable, that is manufacturable. So it's not only the design, you have then to transform this design into something manufacturable. And this is sometimes one of the most difficult parts on a project. Then you have assets cost, and here I will focus on the mold. And if we look injection mold, so most of the time we are talking between the cheapest maybe 100,000 euros, but normally we will be in the range between 200,000 euros to half million. So you can imagine for each miniature the cost of molds that you can have associated. I guess for the small miniatures, for the ones that are the clam pack or the clamshell miniatures, that is only one hero, maybe we're talking about 100,000, between 100,000 to 100,000 euros per mold. So it's not a cheap mold, and have a lot of and you have to pay this, and yeah, it will depend. You have to pay the mold back selling miniatures, so you have to sell some miniatures to pay this cost. So injected molding molds are very expensive, and this is the reason that not a lot of the producers are doing injection molding and are going more to casting. Because casting, the difference is that normally the assets, the investment you have to do at the beginning are much lower. Then we have the manufacturing costs. You need the mold, but you also need a facility to run the mold. You need a machine, you need operators, you have to pay the energy. So need all these costs, and this, of course, will be associated the most you do. So this will pay a X per miniature. The assets is a fixed cost. You have to pay this once, but it's a big bunch of money. Design also is a fixed cost. Doesn't matter if you design uh, one hero or 10 infantry guys. Normally the costs are going to be very similar, because when they design a kit of 10 guys, uh, it's not that different. I don't think it's much more work than designing a hero with all the highly detail that they put. We have the material cost, and here I think the material cost is the lowest impact on all this breakdown. Material costs that they use polyester. These plastics are very cheap, and they don't use a lot. So manufacturing costs, cost of the assets, design costs are going to be more expensive than the material costs. Then we have the packaging and presentation. Of course, they have to put these things into a box and film this box to be sure that it arrive safety to you, or they have to put it in a clam pack or clamshell. So yeah, there are some other costs associated, a part of making the miniature, and this cannot be negligible. There are some costs associated, and it's not cheap, because it's the packing plus the packaging part plus putting the miniature inside of the pack, classifying the miniatures. There is a lot of stuff there, and it's not as cheap as people can think is about. And then we have the supply chain cost. They have to transport, they have to warehouse, they have to pass customs. When I guess when they go from UK to US, they have to pay a custom fees. They need people to run all these. They need a warehouse manager, a supply chain. They need supply chain manager. Is quite. There is a lot of work there and a lot of things to take into account. So you have also this cost. This you can see the only cost that can be depending on the size of the miniature is the material cost, maybe the design and the manufacturing cost. All the other costs are fixes and are not going to change from one to another. But the transport cost, of course, transporting a big box is more expensive than transporting a small clam pack. And then we have the marketing, sell point, and retail margin cost. Okay. When I say marketing, marketing can be White Dwarf. Marketing can be having people to do the videos in YouTube. Doesn't is not only making ads. So there are a lot of things and promotions and things that they have to do to sell their products and to try to bring more people into the hobby. So there are some marketing and then the sell points. So if there is their own shop, they need people to run the shops and they need to pay the what's called the rent of the place. And if not, if they don't want to pay, then they have to give the retail margin. And if we can see, and we have seen in the last finance report from Games Workshop, really the retail is not giving business to them. It's not giving money. It's just. But I think they use it because it's a good marketing point. It's a good way to introduce new people into the business. So let's see. There are a lot of costs associated, and most of the costs are fixed and are not dependent on the size of the miniature. Marketing, supply chains is a little bit dependent. Um, Packaging and presentation can be quite independent of the size of the miniature, the assets, the mold. So all these costs are associated. So people is thinking, oh, this is much smaller or bigger. Really, this is only impacting some of this part, and the material is the smaller part of all these costs here. So then, why clamshell miniatures are expensive? And I think this is where Games Workshop is more expensive. I will show you that in other formats they are not as expensive. If we review uh, to do a clamshell miniature have almost the same cost of making 10 miniatures on a box. Because if we go back to previous, design cost is going to be the same. Assets can be a little bit lower, but the volume, so you are going to sell much less of heroes than these packs of 10 guys. So this is why, yeah, although, for example, imagine that the cost of 10 guys is costing double the mold. But on the other hand, they will sell more than double of infantry normally. They sell less heroes than units. So this is why, even though the asset can be lower, the return is much lower because the volume of sales is much smaller for the heroes. So you need to pay all the assets, all the different things, and you sell less, so the consumer base is less for characters. For example, for a special character, you're only going to buy once. But if I'm going to talk about uh, Marines, a box of basic Marines, most likely we'll buy 2, 3 box of basic Marines. So this is why, and normally the clan packs are more expensive because they don't expect to sell as many as the case of the cases, and because they are not needed for the armies, and the costs associated are not that lower. And then, yeah, I think this is one of the most important things that Games Workshop did, and this is why even the unit cost can put down and can be comparable to the clan pack unit, is that they have to do multi-unit packs. They have to do. I think is one of the best things that Games Workshop did is in one pack to be able to do 2 units because in that way you can sell this pack several times. So yeah, you pay a little bit more on assets because you need maybe a little bit more on molds, but you're going to increase a lot the consumer base. So this is why I think multi-unit packs are mandatory to keep running the business at the cost they are doing today. Remember, a plastic injection mold can go easily to from 200,000 to half million euros. And then I have another question. Why this big difference in cost between units? And he just told me about the witch elves. And then when I go to the website and I look the composition, because I don't play with dark elves, so I didn't know, uh, and the cost, so I was not familiar, but I just went there and I compared the witch elf versus the dark sharks, and you see that the cost is almost double. But I also observe that they have the double number of sprues, so this means the double of investment to do this clan pack, this set compared to the dark sharks. So for me, it's not strange that at the end, when they do the numbers, this pack is double cost than this one. They need to do almost double of investment because they have to pay more molds or bigger molds. So I don't know how they run, if they have one mold for each sprue or they can combine. Most likely they will have one mold per sprue in order not to make super huge molds, but this means that then the cost of making this and the investment needed to do this, which elf pack is more expensive than dark shards. Does it always happen? Not always. But we see that when we go to Space Marines or one of these kits with 5 guys, yeah, they are more or less in the same range. And I think these dark shards are quite maybe all miniatures, and this is why they are more cheaper than other kits. We see that normally they have between 2 and 3 sprues, and the cost is oscillating around 30 something euros. So I guess also there is a aim or a objective to unify cost per kit. And the last thing I wanted to do, and this is why it's going to tell me if they are overpriced or not, I compare them to other companies. Compare them to Privateer Press, Mantic, Reaper Bonds, Mirs, and Raging Heroes. Yeah, there are units that there are companies that are quite tricky. For example, Mirs don't have really infantry, so don't look at this number because it's the cost of the infantry and the heroes is the same. We see that if we look basic troops, they are the only really company that is cheaper is Mantic. The other companies are more or less in the range. Raging Heroes don't do a lot of troop kits, they only have a couple. And yeah, Mirs don't do really troops kits, they only sell solo miniatures. Reaper Bonds, very cheap, but I don't want to have the quality of Reaper Bonds on Games Workshop, really. And then we have Reaper. Reaper is, they don't have really kits. And then when we go to Heroes is where I think, or Clan Packs, is where I think Games Workshop is more expensive than the rest. And I think it's more expensive because they go for injected mold technology that you need to invest more on assets. So, sorry. So, yeah, if we go to big kits, I think they are quite aligned. Mantic and Reaper don't do really big kits like can do Games Workshop. And here, yeah, this have to be close. The only thing I wanted to compare is Reaper versus Reaper Bonds. Yeah, there is a cost decrease, and I think the casting of Reaper Bonds, I don't. What I have seen up to now, I don't like the quality. So I don't think, except for the heroes, for the solo packs, is the only point Games Workshop is more expensive than the competitors, but on the other parts, they are not much higher than competitors. Even some competitors can be much expensive, and this is 25. Sorry, this is a typo mistake there. So my conclusion, I think we can find the miniatures are expensive. I don't think they are overpriced. There are a lot of costs associated to the miniatures, and this is why my final opinion. If you take into account all the costs associated to make miniatures and you compare to the rest, I don't think they are overpriced. We can find them expensive, but this is a hobby. Nobody is, you are not obliged and it's not needed to live. So, but I don't think they're overpriced. If they were overpriced, they will be much expensive than competition, and I don't think they are much expensive than competition, except for the heroes. I think the heroes are a little bit expensive, but it's because of the technology they're using. And that's all. So leave your comment below. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you again later. Bye.